Hey guys, how's it going? So I'm up here in the front sun porch and I want to give you an update on our citrus plants because I've got 3 of them up here. They're doing really well. Starting with this Meyer lemon. This one, I had a couple more lemons on the front of it. I posted a picture on Instagram and Facebook just recently, and so you could see the extra fruit, but they were ready to harvest and I've been waiting patiently for these fruit to ripen. So I harvested those. You can see a couple more down here and they're starting to feel a little bit softer, like they might be close to ready to pick. There's another one on this branch down here, and then there are 5 more toward the back, which are just working on coloring up right now. Then I've got a lime tree. I just counted 8 limes on here. We've got the first one right up top. There's another one down here. This one is feeling really good. And the smell, like just even when I touch these limes, the smell is so intense that I can smell it on my hands for a while afterward. Here's a third one. That one's feeling pretty nice. There's 3 on this branch, so a very productive branch here. And then I've got 2 more right here. Oh, and I just noticed there's a little bud. Do you see that? I haven't even looked on this plant for flower buds, but that's exciting. And then in the back here, oh, and there's buds on this one too. Buds on the lemon. Right here, I've got another lemon tree. This is called a pink lemonade lemon. I have never tried one of these, like I've never tasted one, but I've seen them for sale in the grocery store. I chose this plant because it's pretty. I mean, the leaves are just gorgeous. Look at the colors. It looks like green camo. So there's like 3 different colors of green and then cream around the edges. And I just thought it had such a beautiful soft appearance to it. And then the fruit's gorgeous. So yellow with green striping. And this one is clearly very happy because it's been blooming and it's setting new little fruit. So there's one there, one here, and you can look all over. There are little fruit and there's a whole bunch more buds, which is so exciting that they love this spot so much. So I really wanted to show this one like the most because I showed it to you in a video this summer. It was all about how to have success with containerized citrus plants, and I repotted this Meyer lemon into this pot in that video, and I said I'd give you an update. So this is the update at this point, and I wanted to talk specifically about what I've done to get these plants to this point. If you are interested in growing citrus in containers, I would recommend that you watch that first video because it is loaded with details, not things that I necessarily want to talk all about in this video. So anyway, we will link that down below. So I do want to go over basics. First of all, repotting and what kind of pots you choose and soil. So you can see I have most everything in terracotta. I prefer that. I think plants prefer that as well because it's a porous material. Oxygen can go in and out through the sides of the pots and it keeps the roots of the plants really happy. In the case of using terracotta with citrus, I just use regular Espoma organic potting mix because I feel like the ratio of like moisture retention with the exchange of oxygen is really good. It has a really good relationship with each other. You can see like I pot most everything in terracotta. I've got the Eugenia topiaries in here in terracotta as well. If you're choosing plastic, which are definitely lighter weight, easier to move in and out if that's something that you're doing, I would use the Espoma cactus mix because it helps facilitate drainage, facilitate water movement. Citrus don't like to be sitting in water for a really long time. Plastic retains more moisture, so I feel like that's a really good blend, the plastic with the cactus mix. Also, when I repotted with my fresh potting mix, I did add in a fertilizer. So I did a slow release rather than a liquid. I used the citrus tone. I like this method better because it's a slow feed to the roots of your plants and you don't have to do it as often. The liquid type, which is available for citrus, is just more of a quick shot of nutrients and you have to do it a little bit more often, like every couple of weeks I think it is, as opposed to 2 or 3 times in an entire year. So I put some of this in the pot when I repotted. I'm going to be feeding these again probably about February, again in June, and then probably again in the fall, so that'll be my 3rd application. If you live somewhere that it's mild outside and you don't have to bring them inside necessarily, I don't think I would do the fall application of fertilizer because it'll help push extra foliar growth. Like you can see new growth on this lemon right here. And you don't necessarily want that if they're going to be in a position where they could receive colder temperatures because this tender new growth is much more susceptible to winter damage. And the next thing is watering. You can see that the moisture level on top of this lime tree is fairly damp still. I watered a day before yesterday, I think. For citrus, you just want to make sure that you don't keep them too waterlogged. You want to make sure like the top inch or so of soil has dried out between waterings, and it will be different for everybody. It'll be different depending on if they're outside, inside, how much wind they're getting, if you have a small floor heater running near them, which I do when it gets really cold and that dries them out quicker. It depends on what type of pot you use, what type of soil. So you just have to kind of learn over time what that specific plant will need. And I know I have to come out here into the sun porch about once a week to give them a little bit of water. And the last thing, actually the second to last thing I wanted to talk about was kind of environmental stuff. So temperature, how I transition mine from inside to outside. So first off, we are in a sun porch that's hooked to the south side of our house. It's unheated. It does absorb a lot of heat during the day. If the sun is out, it's overcast today, but it retains quite a bit of heat. Usually we have colder winters than we have this year. We've gotten really lucky. So I've left my citrus in here. This was actually going to be my transition spot. I was going to move them from outside to here because this emulates a little bit of inside, and then I was going to put them in like to the inside of our house where it's a lot warmer, but it's been warm enough to just leave them out here. And I think that they're so much happier because it doesn't get so hot and it's not as dry as it is inside. And I think that's why a lot of citrus plants defoliate. They tend to not want to be moved anyway, so you might get a little bit of leaf drop when you initially move them anywhere. Even if you're moving them from one spot outside to another spot outside, they might drop a few leaves. But typically when I move them, like if you were to move them straight from outside right to the inside, you might experience quite a bit of leaf drop, and I think that's totally normal. But when you have a transition spot, it eliminates a little bit of that. So if you can emulate something like this, I think it's really, really nice, because you know, these plants, we're forcing houseplants to do something they don't want to do. Citrus plants, ferns, eugenias, they're all native somewhere. They want to be growing outside with the conditions that they like, and here we are putting them in pots and making them do something that they don't normally want to do. So it can be a little bit stressful, especially when you move them inside. When they're outside for the summer, they do really, really well. So if that's something you can plan on doing, keeping them outside when it's nice and then bringing them in, that's the best thing to do. Sometimes, like in our old house, we didn't have as many opportunities. Like I didn't have a room that was so bright. I didn't have a place that was, you know, like halfway between outside temperatures and inside. So my citrus, they just struggled through the winter, and I tried to give them as much light as I could, and you know, they struggle. And then the second I put them outside in April, usually end of April, beginning of May, they would start to flourish again. So don't get too discouraged if you can't emulate, you know, quite what they need. You just want to find a spot that is as bright as possible, as much light as you can give them inside, the better. If you have to provide supplemental lighting, do that. You know, grow lights, there's clamp lights you can point straight at their foliage if you want. There's pendant lights you can drop down, or just a really tall grow light system. There are like ballasts you can hang from the ceiling. They also prefer a little bit cooler spot. So don't put them right next to a heat register or in a room that stays, you know, really warm. Like we have a room with a fireplace. That one naturally stays a lot warmer when we're burning fires. So if you can find a spot that gets a lot of light, that's a little cooler, that's the best. Also make sure that there's some kind of air circulation that helps keep populations of insects down, especially like spider mites. So make sure that there's a fan going nearby. So anyway, that's kind of my tips on that. I'm going to be watching these throughout this winter. If the weather turns for the worse, I might have to move them inside. But for the time being, I've got this little heater here, and I just set it on, usually I have it on max right now just so it was warm enough for us. But usually I have it set about right there, and it only pops on when it gets down to a certain temperature. And it got down to 9 degrees this fall outside, and I just had that on in here. It took the edge off, and they all lived through that night really well, and we haven't been that cold since that night. I mean, I guess another option would be to construct some kind of greenhouse, if you can, if that's something that you've wanted to do. If you can position it in a spot that gets nice sun, that's protected, like the south side of your house is the best for those types of things, because they typically get the most amount of sunshine. Plus they're snugged up next to a structure that can kind of protect them from more wind. But again, you may have to run some kind of heater. I know like these right here probably would not be happy in our bigger cold frame because we don't heat that at all, and it's too big of a space to try to heat just for a few plants. So maybe a smaller greenhouse structure would be better because you could maybe regulate temperature a little bit better. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to talk about was pollination. Because obviously right now there's not a lot of pollinators out. We don't have butterflies or honeybees rolling around, and there's not a lot of airflow. There is airflow in here, but there's not like wind. And a lot of pollination happens either from stronger winds outside, breezes, or from pollinators. So inside you want to give them a little bit of help. So you can use a paintbrush or a Q-tip, and we're just going to do a little hand pollination on this lemon tree over here. So we've got a bloom right here, and you can see there's a couple different parts that you want to be mindful of. The part in the center right here, that's called a stigma. You can see like that more like bold spot right in the center. That is where the part of the flower that accepts the pollen and starts the reproductive process. And then these parts on the outside, these are called stamens. And so you can see like little filaments holding up what's called anthers. And the anthers are just little sacs of pollen that you want to just rough that pollen up on your brush, make sure it gets, put on the stigma as well. And then we're just gonna go from flower to flower and do that. And you want to do this often. I mean, this is what honeybees are doing, and butterflies and things like that that are moving around our plants in the summertime. They're just basically going from flower to flower and delivering pollen. And that's what helps our fruit set. Now this plant though isn't really having a huge problem setting fruit because I'm seeing, little fruit that have formed since they have been in here. But your crop will be much better if you can do a little bit of hand pollination like this. These are all self-fertile varieties. Most citrus are. There are a few varieties that aren't, so just check the tag. Self-fruitful varieties means that you don't have to have multiple varieties of a plant in order to get fruit. Like I could just have this lemon tree right here, and I think this one's I'll have to double check. But most of them, you just need the one plant and they'll still produce fruit. You don't need to have multiple plants, but that's something to definitely read up on the tag about. And I can't remember on this one. So anyway, I think that was all the points I really wanted to cover. Just the basics: potting and watering, fertilizing, hand pollinating. I hope this video was helpful to those of you guys who maybe have thought about trying to do this, just seeing some of the things that we do and the success level we're having. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.